start out the second part of this unit, I want to explain the bottom statement here in the PowerPoint. Okay? Back at the beginning of the year, we dealt with interval notation, brackets and parentheses. Okay? Both of these mean the same thing. One value is in degrees, the other is in radians. Right? So when I look at my unit circle, what is the first value I could have as an answer? 0. And then I can go all the way around, but can I ever answer 2 pi? No, if the answer you want to give me is 2 pi, you should report it as 0. Or if the answer you want to give me is 360, you have to give it to me as 0 because 360 is coterminal with 0. So we're only going to list the first revolution, not including 360 or 2 pi. Good with that? Everybody? Okay. Let's take a look at our first example. As you do these more and more, you're going to start to see that they resemble linear or quadratic equations. So if I take out all the sign stuff and I look at this in a different form, I could say 2s squared minus 1 equals 0. Is this the form of a linear or quadratic equation? Go back. Linear or quadratic in red? Quadratic. And do you agree this would be the square root method of solving? So just because we switched to a little bit more complicated variable, we're now going to say it's sine squared, we're going to solve it like this and isolate the trig term. So I'm going to add 1, divide by 2, and I get this statement. Do I have sine by itself? Does it say sine of x equals? I still have a squared here. What did we do in order to get rid of a squared, or how do you undo a term that is squared? Square root. But remember, when we take the square root, how many solutions are there? 2. Now, this comes down to some algebra. I can split this into plus or minus the square root of 1 over the square root of 2. Rationalize my denominator. And I get plus or minus root 2 over 2, don't I? I'm not done at this point. Yes, I solved an equation and I got down to a statement that says the sine of x is equal to plus or minus root 2 over 2. But now you have to think out the values of x from the unit circle in terms of radians because I gave you an x. So, sine is the y value. List for me all of the y values that have plus or minus root 2 as the y value. X is equal to what? Pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. Those are the final answers that I'm looking for. As you can see now, we are blending all of the equation solving techniques that we've learned with the trig. This is officially Algebra 3 pre-calculus. You have arrived. All right, next one. Example 2. When I look at this, tangent x is not squared, so this is not a quadratic equation in my mind. This is linear. So I'm going to isolate the tangent x. Tangent x is equal to negative root 3. And now I get to think out my answer. Tangent is going to be negative in what quadrants? 2 and 4. So whatever answers you give me in radians, because we have x, need to come from those two quadrants. Tangent is a ratio of y over x. So if I put this over 1, how can I transform what I have into what was unit circle values? What do I have to do? This is not unit circle values right now. put both of them back over 2, and then say, okay, I need a whole lot of y with a little bit of x. That's going to put me here. A whole lot of y, a little bit of x is going to put me here. What are those two values in radians? X is equal to what? 2 pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. Like? Don't like? Okay, moving on. Example 3. Example 3, we would not have been able to do unless we did the first part of the unit on identities. Okay? I want to make a statement. Please make sure you write this down. You may not divide by a trig term. A lot of students look at this and say, well, I have a sign on both sides. If I divide by sign, I am going to simplify my equation. That's true, but you are also getting rid of some of your solutions. Let me give you an example of this. X squared equals x. Am I allowed to divide by x? No. The way I would solve the quadratic is put everything on one side, factor out the x, and I get two solutions, 0 and 1. If I divide by x, do you see how the 0 solution went away? Illegal. You can't do it here. We can't do it here. So here's your reminder of that. When I look on the left-hand side, I think this is more complicated, don't you? So let's bring everything over to the left.